Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Shravanam Diaries Podcast.
Reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, the book by His Divine Grace Abhayacharanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Text 26. Kama krodha vimuktanam yatinam yata chetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate vididatmanam. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme, in the very near future. So free from anger, no anger, and free from all material desires, those who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection. See, one would think that if you're free from anger and material desires and you're self-realized, self-disciplined, you're perfect, right? I'm perfect. But he's also constantly endeavoring for perfection. Such a person is assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. Purport: of the saintly persons who are constantly engaged in striving toward salvation, one who is in Krishna consciousness is the best of all. The Bhagavatam 4.22.39 confirms this fact as follows. Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya. Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya karmashayam grathitam udgrathayanti santa tadvannarikta matayo yatayo pirudha shroto ganastamaranam bhaja vasudevam. Quote, just try to worship in devotional service Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep-grown desire for fruitive activities. Unquote. In the conditioned soul, the desire to enjoy the fruitive results of work is so deep-rooted that it is very difficult, even for the great sages, to control such desires, despite great endeavors. A devotee of the Lord constantly engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, perfect in self-realization, very quickly attains liberation in the Supreme. Owing to his complete knowledge in self-realization, he always remains in trance. To cite an analogous example of this, here comes the analogy. Darshana dhyana samsparshair matsya kurma vihangamaha Svanyapatyani pushnanti tatham api padmaja. Quote, by vision, by meditation, and by touch only do the fish, the tortoise, and the birds maintain their offspring Similarly, do I also, O Padmaja. Unquote. The fish brings up its offspring simply by looking at them. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. The eggs of the tortoise are laid on land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, the devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly, by engagement in Krishna consciousness. He does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana, or the absence of material miseries due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme. Texts 27 to 28. Sparshan kritva bahirbahyamsh chakshush chaivantare bruvo pranapanau samau kritva na sabhyantara charinau yatendriya mano buddhir munir moksha parayanaha vigaticha bhaya krodho ya sada mukta eva saha. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Purport. Being engaged in Krishna consciousness, one can immediately understand one's spiritual identity. And then one can understand the Supreme Lord by means of devotional service. When one is well situated in devotional service, one comes to the transcendental position, qualified to feel the presence of the Lord in the sphere of one's activity. This particular position is called liberation in the Supreme. So being well situated in devotional service, meaning to become qualified to feel the presence of the Lord in the sphere of one's activity. Oh, that would be wonderful. This particular position is called liberation in the Supreme. After explaining the above principles of liberation in the Supreme, the Lord gives instruction to Arjuna as to how one can come to that position by the practice of the mysticism or yoga known as Ashtanga Yoga, which is divisible into an eightfold procedure called Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. In the 6th chapter, the subject of yoga is explicitly detailed, and at the end of the 5th, it is only preliminarily explained. One has to drive out the sense objects, such as sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, by the pratyahara process in yoga, and then keep the vision of the eyes between the two eyebrows, and concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed lids. There's no benefit in closing the eyes altogether, because then there is every chance of falling asleep. Nor is there benefit in opening the eyes completely, because then there is the hazard of being attracted by sense objects. The breathing movement is restrained within the nostrils by neutralizing the up-moving and down-moving air within the body. By practice of such yoga, one is able to gain control over the senses, refrain from outward sense objects, and thus prepare oneself for liberation in the Supreme. This yoga process helps one become free from all kinds of fear and anger, and thus feel the presence of the Supersoul in the transcendental situation. In other words, Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of executing yoga principles. This will be thoroughly explained in the next chapter. A Krishna conscious person, however, being always engaged in devotional service, does not risk losing his senses to some other engagements. This is a better way of controlling the senses rather than by Ashtanga Yoga. Text 29. Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. This verse is the formula of peace. I forgot to mention. I feel like reading this again with a deeper feeling. This is also the last verse in this chapter, so let's absorb in this one more time. Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Purport. The conditioned souls within the clutches of the illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world. But they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary of all human activities. Let's read this again. Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Man should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord, because he is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than he. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishvaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey. But actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is the master of material energy, and the conditioned souls are under these stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute. And the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya. And that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life, even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter. For it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness. Listen to this. Practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness. Everything depends on that. Which helps one to control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above-mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage, or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The book links, previous episodes timeline, and biography of the author can be found on shravanamdiaries.com. The link is in the description, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.